Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange, joined by ESPN Houston's Joel Blank of the Press Box. Joel, welcome in. We've heard a little bit of informational drips through social media about who the Rockets are considering for their new head coach. But everybody knows Joel Blank got that drip. So, Joel, give us the latest. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing a lot, guys, and I'm hearing James Harden's going to be in the mix no matter what happens. I think that ever since Kevin McHale was fired when James Harden went to Les Alexander, a precedence was set over at Toyota Center that whatever happens is going through number 13. So, with that being said, I think that there's going to be a lot of candidates. Some are going to be some of the ones that are rumored. Others are ones that haven't been mentioned yet. I think that you're going to see Tyronn Lue get an interview. I think ex-Rocket Sam Cassell deserves a chance to put his name in the mix. And I think one that nobody's mentioned but makes all the sense in the world is Kelvin Sampson. Kelvin Sampson at the University of Houston, a former Rockets coach who, when I was there, was very tight with number 13. If you remember when Sampson got the U of H job, Harden was there. When big things have happened for Sampson, Harden has been there. And I think that in that same breath, Harden needs someone that he's comfortable with, that he can trust, that he knows will have his back and best intentions, because D'Antoni turned the ball over to him and made him a point guard. Going from D'Antoni to anybody else means it better be a smooth transition and he better be happy with it. Kelvin checks all the boxes. U of H, he's got a deal in place, I believe, that if he leaves, his son takes over. So his son could be at U of H. He could be at Houston with the Rockets. They don't have to leave town. Kelvin knows how the organization works, and he knows how the best player thinks. It just makes all the sense to me.
Could we see, is there any chance that we could see them poach maybe an up-and-coming assistant that maybe has a little bit more is analytically minded, or someone who's a little bit more out there and thinks outside the box? What category do you see this next coach falling into?
Well, I think there's two categories, Brandon. I think you're going to see a lot of guys that have ties back to the Rockets. As long as Daryl is involved in making the decision, like Tillman says, analytics is going to be a big key. So I think the sleeper name to watch is Chris Finch. He was an assistant under Kevin McHale. Before that, he was coaching in the G League for the Rockets, and Daryl has always been highly enamored with Chris Finch. He's been an assistant with the Pelicans, a lot of positive reviews from the young players about what he's able to do. So I think the sleeper pick is Chris Finch. I think the established guy and a younger guy in the Eric Spoelstra mode that also has Rockets ties is Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson, under the Jeff Van Gundy era, was the director of player development for the Rockets. He brings it on both ends of the floor. He knows how to shoot the three on a consistent basis. He believes in that type offense, which is a win for the roster that you have right now. So I think that that's also a possibility. If you don't go that direction with analytics, then you have to go in favor of a player's coach that knows how to take care of the superstar player. Tyronn Lue is that guy, because he came in after David Blatt and resurrected a Cavaliers team led by LeBron James, who wasn't very happy with structure and discipline and all the things that Blatt brought from Europe. Tyronn Lue is a guy that's going to listen and communicate with his two best players, Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And maybe that, in a nutshell, is enough to get the Rockets to play better basketball and get on the same page as they move forward. Because the West is getting better, as we've seen, from the bubble, from the bottom to the top, from Phoenix and Memphis at the bottom to the way that teams like Utah have performed and Denver have performed, as well as the two LA teams. And no one's going anywhere. So that means the Rockets have to get better to compete with those teams. It's going to be real interesting to see how they choose to do that.
I want to get into more of the philosophical differences and things shift we may see. But before we do that, why don't you give us a word from our video sponsors at Fitz Roofing?
We love Fitz Roofing. They're dedicated to us. They're dedicated to the people of Houston, Texas. They'll be dedicated to you. They use the best product in the business, CertainTeed shingles, and their guarantees and their warranties are better than your average roofer. Their rating's the best in the business, and you get a free no-obligation inspection just by calling them. Call today, 832-521-3001, and see what I've been talking about. Fitz Roofing, making a difference, one home at a time.
Joel, you mentioned that whoever they pick to be the coach and whatever philosophy they go to implement, James Harden's going to need to be on board with that. Before D'Antoni got here, we mentioned that James was a little bit more off the ball. Do you think James would be agreeable to going back off the ball again, to where maybe he's not as dominant on the ball, not doing the primary ball handling, to where maybe he's not, have so much responsibility throughout the entirety of the game, and maybe there's a little bit more tread on the tire left in the fourth quarter, specifically in the playoffs in the fourth quarter?
Well, Brandon, I think then if that's going to be discussed with James Harden, then whoever becomes the next head coach of the Houston Rockets better have a degree in psychology, regardless of how well they do coaching, because you're going to have to convince James Harden that the leading scorer in the league that is being talked about as one of the greatest offensive forces the NBA has ever seen is going to have to take a step back so that this team can take a step forward. He said all the right things when they got Russell Westbrook about, I'll do less so we can do more. But guess what? At the end of the day, as long as you're still the leading scorer in the league and you got more shots than you ever gotten before, you haven't changed. So you and I have seen him on a night-by-night basis. If he doesn't have the ball in his hands, how interested and engaged is he in the offense? How many back cuts, how many slices, how many picks has he set? How many slicing to the goal without the ball do you see James Harden do? Most times he looks disinterested sitting around midcourt. So he's going to have a whole different attitude adjustment no matter who becomes head coach if they're going to play any differently than they played under Mike D'Antoni.
How much do you believe that Tillman Fertitta will be a part of this decision-making process? Obviously, he will be to some extent because he is the owner, and from what we understand, he is a hands-on owner because he believes in his product and is very passionate about the product on the court. So how much, let's say percentage-wise, do you think that Tillman's going to influence this decision? And, do you think that he values a big name versus, someone who's going to be more analytically minded?
I'll go 70%. And I think the reason why is, and I think he wants a big name, is because now is his chance to make his splash, to make his mark. You remember, he took over the team when it was almost ready to start a season. So you couldn't make any changes. From the front office on the business side to the basketball side, you just had to roll with the punches and see how everything worked and just get your feet wet in the NBA. And then because the team had so much success under D'Antoni with Chris Paul and the things they were able to do early on, if it wasn't broke, he didn't want to fix it, so he left his hands off. Now, because you had the combination of the Rockets getting bounced quickly, abruptly, and not the way they wanted, the fact that D'Antoni has been shown the door or agreed to leave or whatever the case may be, he's gone. The fact that Daryl's number 2 man, Monty McNair, was just named head of basketball for the Sacramento Kings. The door is wide open to make all the changes now, to change the culture, to change the personnel, and to put his stamp on it his way. That and the fact that he's been frugal, more than Les Alexander, in terms of how he's handled the salary cap, and he only wanted to go over it if, in fact, Daryl felt like they had a championship team. So far, they've actually made trades at the deadline to make sure they didn't go over it, which was the first telltale sign they're not as good as people might think they are. So I think for all those reasons and all those considerations, Tillman's going to put his stamp on the franchise this offseason, and Tillman's going to put his stamp on basketball. That means he's going to get a guy, whether Daryl picks him or not, that he agrees to the salary, the length of years, and the name that goes along with representing his team. And I think it's a big offseason for Tillman as he makes it his squad with the Rockets.
How much does it limit the opportunity, or how much does it limit their selection? The fact that Daryl Morey really picks the assistant coaches and kind of, makes those decisions. How many head coaches are really going to walk into that sort of opportunity to where they're limited into who their assistants are going to be? Because that does seem to box you in philosophically as to really putting your coaching philosophy onto a team.
Oh, there's no question, Brandon. It's a great question, because here's the thing. Daryl started the trend of the general manager being able to pick at least a majority of the assistant coaches. And I've talked to assistant coaches in the league. And just like when you have a team in a locker room that has to be tight-knit, you have to make sure that there are no moles in the room, and you can trust everybody in those 4 walls, and you know that you're going to war every single night with people that have your back. In the case of the Rockets, when Kevin McHale got the head job, he was only allowed to pick one assistant coach, and that was J.B. Bickerstaff. Kelvin Sampson, who was in the running to the bitter end to be the head coach, was selected by Daryl Morey to be one of the top assistants. How can you trust in a room amongst coaches when you're trying to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that you're going to have everybody having your back when the guy that was after your job and didn't get it is on your bench? I think that Daryl was able to give it a go, and other teams have tried it. But I think that for true chemistry with the coaching staff, just like you need with chemistry in the locker room and on the court, I don't think that Daryl's philosophy is going to work any further. If you get an existing and an established coach, depending on what kind of a coach you need, you think Jeff Van Gundy is going to trust someone that he didn't handpick to be on his bench? Oh, no, not even close. Or he won't take the gig. So that's the thing. The Rockets used to be such an attractive gig. Everybody wanted it so badly, they'd agree to whatever terms Daryl laid down. Now, it's not the sexiest pick in the league. Now, it's not the number 1 team that has a chance to win the championship. So the days of him being able to strong-arm whoever gets the head coaching gig into doing things his way are over. And I think he's going to have to make some concessions to get the guy that Tillman or he wants.